like to thank the organizing committee. Special thanks to Dr. Shibla and Dr. Shamshuri to allow me to talk in front of the esteemed guests. When I was approached to give this lecture, the first thing that came to my mind is to talk about transplant and thalassemia patient for two reasons. Because transplant is the only curative treatment for thalassemia, and this is what I do on a day-to-day basis in the United States. But upon further discussion, I decided to shift the topic to hydroxyurea, because even in resource-abundant country like the United States and Europe, not everybody has access to transplant due to restriction in insurance, due to restriction on availability of resources, and availability of matches. That's one reason. The second is hydroxyurea is a cheap medicine that we could use in a limited resources country like in the Middle East. This is the outline of my lecture today. We'll talk about beta thalassemia as a global health problem, a little bit brief overview. We'll talk about the molecular basis of hemoglobin F regulation and beta thal. We'll focus on the hydroxyurea, especially which patient respond and which one is not, and meta-analysis for the literature review to have an evidence-based medicine to support your current practice in the clinical arena. Then we'll touch base on the other hemoglobin F inducers. Then we'll talk about the take-home message after that. You know, needless to say, this is just a little bit background about the disease. First, I wanted to tell you a little bit of history about the word thalassemia. It is from the Greek word thalemia, thal meaning Mediterranean Sea, emia meaning anemia, and was endemic in the Mediterranean basin from the beginning. It is an autosomal recessive disorder, results from various mutations in the beta globin gene, usually a single base bearer mutation. Also, you could get deletion, but it's not as common as a single base bearer mutation in the beta globin gene. As a result of that, you will have excess production of alpha chain without balanced beta or beta-like globin chain. As a result of that, you will have increase of free complementary alpha chain, and which usually unstable and precipitate within the erythroblast or normoblast as an insoluble conclusion. And this next slide, which summarize the pathophysiology in cases of beta thalassemia, we talk about excess free alpha globin unmatched with other beta or beta-like globin leads to denaturation and deregulation. As a result of that, you will have formation of heme and hemochromes and reactive oxygen species. All of that will lead to hemolysis and anemia. The hemolysis and anemia at the same time will lead to increased iron reabsorption with increased removal of those cells by spleen and the liver and reticuloendothelial system. You'll have splenomegaly. Consequence of that, you will have increased erythropoietin as a result of hypoxia, and there's a stress erythropoiesis. All of that will lead to extramedullary hematopoiesis in the form of skeletal deformities and osteopenia and erythroid marrow expansion and iron overload. Bottom line, an effective erythropoiesis leads to chronic anemia and hemolysis and iron overload. In this slide, I would like to bring your attention to the global distribution of the hemoglobin disorders in terms of birth of affected infants per 1,000. Just to give you an idea how global is this disease. Originally, this was like an area in the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia, some part of Latin America. And as you see with the arrow area, Egypt is one of the endemic area, but it's much higher in the Gulf area. And this one, was done by Weather Isle at 2001 to tell you the distribution of alpha and beta thalassemia, which usually was the places for malaria. This was back in 2001, based on the immigration after that and advances in transportation and communication. Now, you see the dark area, which is the endemic area. People are immigrated to either high area, which is the blue versus yellow area. So basically, it's all over the world now. And this is as of 2012. This is the bulletin of the WHO in 2008. And I wanted to bring it up here to show you the estimated annual birth of beta thalassemia. We have more than 40,000 patients per year. Out of those, only 11% receive transfusion. And same here was the actual cases and the number of patients that receive actual adequate iron chelation therapy is about 89%. The point that I wanted to make here is that it's a very global disease. There is a lot of different modalities of treatment. So far, we have not achieved what we need to achieve in those cases. I'm not sure if it's because it was endemic area beyond the area where you have it like in a more developed country, but now it is all over the place, so more researchers are going into it. And the other point that I want to make is not every case you will do transplant, or not every case you will give blood transfusion due to complication of blood transfusion and limited accessibility, resources. So we need to think about comprehensive model and other individualized treatment plan for limited resources country. Yes, it's great to have a transplant here, but not everybody will have a transplant. And transplant is not a picnic. I do that on a day-to-day basis. I do it for matched sibling, and matched unrelated, and cord transplant. Even with the best 10 out of 10 match with matched sibling, you will have graft versus host disease. You will have transplant-related mortality like vein-occlusive disease. You will have infection. You will have graft failure, graft rejection, and any of those complications could keep the patient forever in the hospital with an immune suppressant, and they could die easily from it. In this slide, we will, talk about the molecular basis of the hemoglobin F regulation, because this is very essential when we talk later on about the other hemoglobin F inducers and the hydroxyurea. As you see, this is a schematic representation of chromosome 11, where you have the locus control region, and you have both all the beta-like globulin, the beta globulin, the delta, the gamma, epsilon, all on the same chromosome on chromosome 11. And this one, I wanted to give you an idea about the pattern of expression of the beta globin and other beta-like globin during fetal life and post-natal. And the y-axis, you will have the percentage of globin synthesis, and the x-axis, you have the postnatal age, prenatal and postnatal age. As you see, during early embryonic life, you will have the alpha hemoglobin and the embryonic, which is the epsilon and zeta. Immediately after that, you will have the gamma globin production increase with mild production of the beta globin until birth. Then the gamma globin reduced, and the beta globin production increased. As you know, the fetal hemoglobin is composed of 2 alpha and 2 gamma. The adult, which is usually when the switch occurs between 4 to 6 months, you'll have 2 alpha and 2 beta globin. There will be also a little bit of production of delta globin, which is a hemoglobin A2. I wanted to bring your attention here, going back to the locus control region. This is the one that controls the production of beta globin or any of those globin later on, and control the switch which happens after birth between production of gamma versus beta. This locus control region, it has what we call hypersensitive sites, which made from transcription protein. And this is like some of those names. The most important one that I want to bring your attention to is the BCL11A, which is the B-cell lymphoma leukemia 11A, the GATA1, LDB1, and other molecules. Any of those transcription protein will be located in this locus control region. There is folding of that locus control region. Once it's folded in a certain way, those transcription protein will stimulate the promoter region for any of those globin. So you will have either production of beta, then you will have the adult hemoglobin 2 alpha and 2 beta, or production of gamma. You have increased production of the fetal hemoglobin, which is 2 alpha and 2 gamma. This is an essential point to understand, to later on to understand how is the mechanistic effect of different factors to induce the hemoglobin F. In this cartoon, I wanted to show you the one that I talked about. This is the locus control region. You have those transcription protein. Those transcription protein, when they are folded in a certain way, they either produce hemoglobin F, which is a fetal hemoglobin, where they stimulate the promoter region of the delta of the gamma globin versus stimulating the promoter region for the beta globin producing adult hemoglobin. And the bottom one, I wanted to show you one of the important transcription protein, which is in the previous one here, LDB1. There were studies done on the cellular level where they have zinc finger tethered to the LDB transcription factor. When you add it to it, the production of hemoglobin H shifted to the production of hemoglobin F as a result of folding of those hypersensitive sites that was in the locus control region here. Now we will talk about what are the drugs that could induce hemoglobin F. And I'm going to focus mainly today on the hydroxyurea. So hemoglobin F inducers, based on their mechanism of action, you will have hypomethylating agent like 5-azacitidine and the cytabine, and those has been studied forever. Histone deacetylase inhibitor like sodium butyrate, chemotherapeutic agent, and people all familiar with hydroxyurea, but there is a stigmata about it because it's chemotherapy used for cancer, so a lot of people get afraid from it. Erythropoietin and others. As I mentioned, hydroxyurea, it is a potent ribonucleotide reductase inhibitor. It is important cytostatic and cytotoxic effect. It's easy to use, very tolerable, has few side effects. Even those side effects are very reversible. You could either decrease the dose or stop and resume again. And it's not expensive. When I asked Dr. Bishlawi here, she said it's about 250 Egyptian pounds, which is not expensive at all. The main indication, this hydroxyurea has been long around, used for chronic myeloproliferative disorder like CML, polythalassemia vera, essential thrombocythemia. Also has been FDA approved in sickle cell disease. We know it prevents vaso-occlusive crisis, the increased interval between transfusions. We know that it prevents acute chest syndrome, and finally increased life expectancy in sickle cell patients. So we have good experience with it with sickle cell, but so far it hasn't gained any popularity with the thalassemia, at least for thalassemia major. The problem with the mechanism of action, so far there is no fixed known mechanism of action, but the most important one, the proposed one, is the stress erythropoiesis model, and I will elaborate on that in a little bit. But we found that it produced 2 to 9-fold increase in gamma messenger RNA, and consequently will increase the hemoglobin F. For the stress erythropoiesis, that has been postulated on the cellular level and transgenic mice models that when you use hydroxyurea, it produces similar effect like the stress erythropoiesis, where you will have the progenitor cells will have more proliferation with certain differentiation directed toward the cells that produce the gamma globin with ultimate production of fetal hemoglobin. Okay, and this, I had about 6 or 8 studies. This is the meta-analysis, was published in 2013 by Dr. Musallam. And they looked at all the studies that looked at the hydroxyurea used in both thalassemia major and thalassemia intermediate. I wanted to concentrate on a few of those studies. I did not include Dr. Bishlawi's study in this one, but she will talk about it a little bit later. And, but also there's an Egyptian experience about 100 patients where they used hydroxyurea in thalassemia major. But we'll start with the top one, Dr. Karimi from Iran, where he looked at 126 patient thalassemia major and 106 of thalassemia intermediate. They used hydroxyurea at a small dose, 10 milligram per kilogram, and they looked at the effect of that on the transfusion requirement. Basically, they did it as a retrospective chart analysis. None of those studies so far until now, none of those studies are prospective, placebo-controlled, double-blinded study. So this is based on looking at the chart and analyzing the effect and all that, which is great, but it's not the ideal situation to look at the effect of a drug like that. So they looked at patients with thalassemia over 13 years period in Iran. The patients were divided into 2 groups. The first group, which is 126 patients, they were transfusion dependent above age of 2. And group 2 was about 106 patients of thalassemia intermediate without any history of blood transfusion or with long interval transfusion in between. 86 patients became transfusion free, and 25 patients needed 1 or 2 transfusions, which this is about, 68% and 20%, total about like 80% response rate in those cases. The interesting part that they did not find that on any significant correlation with the hydroxyurea response was the XMN1 polymorphism, which has been postulated that it affects the result of hydroxyurea in certain patient population. The next study was done in Pakistan, and they looked at about 60 patients. They looked about 119 thalassemia major patients. Out of those patients, 60 of them, 41% became non-transfusion dependent. 57 patients, which is about 39%, had partial response. The results were analyzed at the end of 24 months. The first one was 13 years. This is about 2 years. The last study that I want to bring your attention to, it was done in Algeria by Dr. Brady, where they classified patients with thalassemia major, 45 patients, according to their response. Good responder above 70% reduction in their transfusion, partial responder between 40 to 70, and non-responder less than 40. And they used also hydroxyurea in a much bigger dose than the other, which is about 17.4, that was the median. And as you see here, there is good response rate, about totally 64%. Of those patients, they had good response for the hydroxyurea. In this one, the better response to hydroxyurea was analyzed. They found that older age at the first transfusion was a statistically significant p-value. Higher grade hydroxyurea hemoglobin also was very significant in the response. They looked at the mutation, the XMN1 mutation was associated with the worst response. If you don't have the polymorphism, meaning you have negative homozygous for it, you will have the worst response. By multivariate analysis, the better response was associated with the XMN1 polymorphism. They could not elicit anything with the univariate analysis because of the sample size was not significant enough to give you statistical power. So, in summary for this, the hydroxyurea in those old studies used between 10, the dose was used between 10 to 20 milligrams per day. Most investigators opted to use a fixed low dose. I don't know why, because we use this in sickle cell in much higher dose without much complications. These doses remained lower than the one that we use in sickle cell dose. Those increment about 20 milligrams per day could lead to more favorable response. Although one of the studies has looked at 30 milligrams per kilogram per day, they found some reverse effect. But the number of patients in that study was only about 25 patients, so you cannot draw a conclusion about that. So this needs to be looked at in a longer, bigger samples to look at the effect of higher dose of hydroxyurea. Which brings me to the next point, duration of therapy. Most studies evaluated outcome after 6, 12, and 24 months of therapy. Most of the response you notice in the first 3 to 6 months of therapy was further improvement up to 1 year. Sustained response observed over long-term follow-up. However, some study needed to decline hematological response beyond 12 months. Note the role of age and hemoglobin F level in all of those studies, no consistent results. So it doesn't matter if you start them at 4 years of age or at 15 or 20. And the level of the hemoglobin F at the beginning, some studies say you have a higher hemoglobin F, you will have better response, but those studies also were not validated so far. The most important one is the homozygosity for the XMN1 polymorphism. As we know, the polymorphism where you have a substitution of C for T and a 158 position, this was a strong predictor. Remind me for the time, sorry. This was a strong predictor for the response in most of the study. Also, the BCL11A gene correlates strongly with response for hydroxyurea. Some of the studies looked at it in special populations like XMN1 polymorphism, more common in southern Iran, and they have better response because of that. We don't know yet. So I'm going to fly through this. I wanted to mention also the effect of hydroxyurea. Not only, it's very also well studied on the thalassemia intermediate, and this is the optimal care study, which was multi-center study between Italy, Egypt, Lebanon, Oman, and United Arab Emirates. And I want to bring your attention to the hydroxyurea effect on extramedullary hematopoiesis and pulmonary hypertension. The relative risk here was the p-value significant. Also on the leg ulcers, hypothyroidism, osteoporosis, and hypothyroidism. So bottom line, hydroxyurea treatment was protective for extramedullary hematopoiesis, pulmonary hypertension, leg ulcer, and hypothyroidism. With the optimal care study, this is another thing that they want everybody to look at it, is the effect of complication if you use all the modality of treatment, transfusion, iron chelation, and hydroxyurea. The mean number of complications 0.083. If you don't use any of them, the main complication is 2.43, and this was significantly, statistically significant, even was controlled for ages. I'm going to fly on the other stuff because I'm beyond my time now. This is a list for reference about the hydromethylating agents, including 5-azacitidine, and also other stuff, the new ones, and butyrate. Erythropoietin also is very well known, and you should give it for those cases, especially with renal complication. Other compounds. The summary, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows this point. Hydroxyurea is safe and effective. As a result, you could use it. Don't worry about the carcinogenic effects. It's less than 0.05% for long-term use. And we need better studies to evaluate it, and it could be used in combination with other modalities. Thank you.